One of the things I believe that I remember about our old people so much, and how they valued life, and I think you may have seen a picture because it's very common. It shows a man standing with just a breechcloth on, nothing else on, and he's standing like this toward the east, like this, greeting the sun. The sun is just coming up this way, like that. And so a lot of people, historians and so forth, have got this idea that the Indians were sun worshippers. That's the furthest thing from the truth. They realized that there was strength in the sun because when the sun shone on the vegetation, it would make it grow, heat, so forth. But what they did was stand there like this, so as the sun came up, it would look into every fiber of that human being to burn out anything of negativity. If you had a bad feeling about your neighbor, burn it out. If you had a bad feeling about your brothers, burn it out. Like that. Clear your conscience, your soul, so that you can live another day without all that, because we put a lot of energy into dragging a bunch of junk around about resentments. And you'll find that in all classes of people. Somebody doesn't like this. Of course, I can remember years and years ago we hated the Germans because the Germans wanted to fight the English and this and that, and finally the United States got into it. And it's, when you stop to think about it, you know, you take this people right here like that, they could settle the doggone world problems right here. Because we know how dumb it is. And yet they spend millions upon millions upon millions of money, dollars, in order to stimulate and make these war things to kill people. And it's so doggone wrong that even an old guy like me, as dumb as I am, I can see it. Why can't the guys in Washington, D.C. see it? But here we are, we're over there in Vietnam. You know, countries are quiet. All right, send our young people over there, like that. Bring back cripples. What have we gained? Boy, talk about dumb. Don't look to Washington, D.C. for any bright stuff over there, because I'm afraid you're not going to find it. I don't know. I apologize to anybody here from Washington, D.C. And like I said, during the early Depression, that was in the 20s, I think, 29, and the value of the dollar went poof down. And people lost their fortunes. You older people in here will remember that. When they lost their fortunes, people were jumping out of windows, 20 stories. The fall didn't hurt them, but that sudden stop, boy. And so this old man told me, he said, because he couldn't read, he says, read that for me. He said, I heard that about that. So I said, okay, Grandpa. I said, what they're doing is that these people jump out of these windows. They're way up there. They come down, and I said, it's a sidewalk. It's made out of it's made out of rock, but it's paved, because he didn't understand pavement. But I said, it's great like a big flat rock. And I said, they come down and jump out of that thing. And of course, he knew the results, that you know he couldn't live off of that. He said, why are they doing that, grandson? I said, well, they have what they call a stock market. The stock market went down, and they lost their money. No, he said, I don't care about that. Why did they do that? And I kept trying to explain it to him. And then finally he says, you mean to tell me, grandson, that they jumped out of there because they lost their money? I said, exactly. Hey. He said, I cannot understand the people who take Mother Scott, like this paper, piece of paper. Take a match, it's gone. Why would they jump out of it? He said if they lost their son or a daughter, where they really had pain. He said, yes, I can see that. But to lose that money, my gosh, what has this world come to? But I think that as you look around today, you'll probably find that that we probably are kind of more or less in that dimension. And that is what I find here at Hampton. People are more important. And that's the way it should be. People are more important. Before you take that little piece of what's called, look to your right. Look to your left. There might be a little cousin, or an old grandpa, or old grandmother, cousin, just as hungry as you are. Before you take that, break it off. Cousin, here. Eat. Then you eat. And the belief of our old Lakota people is just that. But I was home here 2 or 3 years ago, and I found that this ill feelings that I call, are creeping in among our people. It seems as though we have so much more alcoholism. One of the things that I hate, and I don't mind saying it, is the abuse of women. When man abuses a woman, that's something that is intolerable. Because in the old days, they would never allow that. And to just give you an example, in the old days, a man was very, very proud of his wife. Very, very proud of his wife. And he would take, in the mornings, when he got up, they generally had hair down to about their waist. He'd take a comb, or they'd have a little comb, and he'd comb her hair. Stand and take and comb her hair on both sides. Comb her hair just so it would just be shiny. And so you wouldn't dare go up to that man, a guy like that and say, well, you're not much of a man combing a woman's hair. Because you know what happened to Custer. Custer says, give me the 7th Cavalry and I'll ride through the entire Sioux Nation. Well, he made it just halfway. They fixed him up with what they call these arrow shirts. I was going to tell you about an old friend of mine, an old grandfather of mine. I shouldn't say a friend, although he was a friend, because I see gray-haired people. They're beautiful. But they are our dearest friends. They have had experience. And the little child that comes running up to an old man like that says, Grandpa, you know, I'm sad. Does the grandpa say, go away, son, I haven't got time? No. Doesn't do that. He says, come on, get up here in my lap, son. He puts his arms around that little boy, that little girl. And he comforts that little person. He helps the little person get through what's called, because he knows what life is like. It's not kind. Life is not kind. And they have an old saying that man, it's Lakota people. I'm not saying all tribes now. Maybe because I don't want to get into trouble with my brothers over here. But the Lakota people have a saying that man was born to suffer. Now that doesn't mean we take a stick, hit ourselves on the head. But it means that we have to know what suffering means. We know what it feels like. We have the sun dance in our country. And at the last day, they have skewers. They take your skin here and cut a little piece on both sides, run that skewer in here on this side like this, and then it's tied to the pole or the tree. You dance backwards until finally that's pulled loose. And what it does, what it means is to devoid ourselves of all these sensual things, to make us pure again. And it's like if somebody was hurting. How can you go to somebody that's suffering, whether it's a woman or a man or a child, and say, my little loved ones, I know how you feel, unless you know what pain is yourself. Because they can see through that just like that. And say, no, you don't know what it is to suffer. And all it does is drives them deeper into their suffering. And so that was the case of our old people about man was born to suffer. I told my son that, and he said, oh, Dad, he said, you're wrong. Today, that isn't true. And I said, all right. I said, you have never suffered? Go to somebody that is really suffering, and go to them and say, I know how you feel. He'd look at you and say, get out of here, you phony. And that's exactly the way it is, because we understand and we know feelings. Every one of us, we know feelings. I know that I came to Haskell Indian School when I was a boy, 13 years old, 14 years old, and I'd never been away to school. And I lived with my grandfather because my mother died when I was very, very young. And I went to a school there at Mobridge for a while. And I went into there and had a big lobby like this. That school had been started going for a while. A bell would ring and everybody would leave and go into rooms. I left standing there. I'd look out the door, nice sunny out there, it was in the fall, and I'd go home. I did that every day for about a week, and I thought, gee, many crackers, boy, this is duck soup. I love this. And I'd go back, and so my grandfather, he says, Kakoja, grandson, I noticed you're around the house a lot lately. Aren't you going to school? And I said, yeah. No, I said, I'm not going to school. I said, I go there, yes. But I said, there's nothing over there. I said, I go in this room and it's empty, and so I come home. Kids all go someplace. Because I've been used to going to a boarding school where they take you and say, you go there, you go there. And it was one of those things. And so all he had to say was, oh, I see. And so I take him over across the river to the reservation. We go to the Womanicha, what's called the Women's Auxiliary, where they used to make star quilts to make a little money so they could send the money over to people overseas who were having it worse than we were having it. And so that spring, my aunt came home. My grandfather understood education, so he had sent my aunt and my uncle away to college, and she was going to school someplace over here in New York. She got home and she said, she noticed me around the house a lot lately, so she said, Philip, I noticed you around the house a lot lately. She said, aren't you going to school? And I said, no. She said, what? You're not going to school? Why, she said, does your grandfather know this? And I said, yes, he knows this. So she went to my grandfather and says, Ate, Father, do you realize that your grandson's not going to school? He said, yes, I do. He said, however, he said, the time spent with me will mean more to him and as he grows older than the time that he's trying to get into that school that he doesn't know how to get into. And how true. Because that old man, and the funny thing about it is, and I believe that our old people, white, black, red, yellow, the old ones, now I'm not talking about the young ones, but the old ones, they realized that education came from the way they lived.